Sean Hicks blinked away the frost on his eyelashes as the cryopod hissed open, revealing a world beyond his wildest dreams. After 70 years of lightspeed travel, he had arrived on a planet teeming with alien beauties. The year was 2263, and humanity's first interstellar vessel, the ISS Odyssey, had completed its monumental journey. Launched in 2193, the ship carried 10,000 frozen colonists across the vast expanse of space, seeking a new home among the stars. Now, as Sean's pod opened, he felt the weight of history on his shoulders. At 35 years old when the journey began, Sean was now technically 105, though his body remained unchanged. As a xenobiologist, he had dreamed of this moment his entire life. The Odyssey had arrived at its destination, a habitable planet orbiting a yellow dwarf star, promising new horizons for humanity. As Sean stumbled out of his pod, alarms blared throughout the ship. The crew, still groggy from their long slumber, rushed to their stations. Signs of an advanced alien civilization had been detected on the planet's surface. Sean's heart raced with excitement and trepidation. Within hours, Sean found himself leading the first contact team to the planet's surface. As their shuttle descended through the atmosphere, he marveled at the alien landscape below. Towering crystal spires pierced the sky, while floating gardens drifted lazily between them. It was a sight beyond imagination. The team touched down in a clearing, and Sean took his first steps onto alien soil. The air was thick with anticipation as they approached a group of waiting aliens. The Sheliak, as they called themselves, were a sight to behold. Humanoid in form, their skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with ethereal beauty. One Sheliak stepped forward, her luminescent skin glowing softly in the alien twilight. "I am Zephyr," she communicated telepathically, her voice resonating in Sean's mind. "I have been assigned to study your species." Sean struggled to maintain his composure as he introduced himself and his team. The Sheliak offered to share their advanced technology with humanity in exchange for genetic samples and cultural information. It seemed too good to be true, and Sean's scientific instincts told him there was more to this offer than met the eye. As the days passed, Sean worked closely with Zephyr, exchanging knowledge and studying each other's species. But a nagging suspicion grew in the back of his mind. Late one night, as he pored over the data they had collected, he made a startling discovery. The Sheliak were facing a fertility crisis, and they sought to use human DNA to enhance their own species. The revelation left Sean reeling. The future of both species now hinged on successful cooperation and genetic compatibility. With the weight of two civilizations on his shoulders, Sean proposed a daring plan, a series of controlled mating experiments between humans and Sheliak. Zephyr, initially hesitant, agreed to participate in the experiments with Sean. As they prepared for the first trial, Sean couldn't help but notice the fear and disgust in Zephyr's luminescent eyes. Sheliak reproduction differed greatly from human methods, and the cultural divide seemed insurmountable. Meanwhile, tensions among the human colonists reached a boiling point. Debates raged about whether to trust the Sheliak or attempt to claim the planet for themselves. The ISS Odyssey remained in orbit, its weapons primed for the worst-case scenario. As Sean and Zephyr entered the sterile laboratory for their first mating attempt, the fate of human-Sheliak relations hung in the balance. Sean knew he had to navigate the treacherous waters of cultural differences and overcome Zephyr's reservations. The survival of both species depended on his ability to bridge the gap between their worlds through successful mating. With a deep breath, Sean reached out to touch Zephyr's glowing skin, hoping against hope that their union would forge a path to a shared future among the stars. As Sean's fingers brushed against Zephyr's luminescent skin, a sudden jolt of electricity coursed through his hand. He recoiled, eyes wide with surprise. Zephyr's bioluminescent patterns flickered erratically, her face contorting in discomfort. "I'm sorry," Sean gasped, examining his tingling fingertips. "Are you all right?" Zephyr's telepathic voice resonated in his mind, infused with concern. "It appears our physiologies are more incompatible than we anticipated. My skin's defense mechanisms activated upon contact with your alien biology." Sean's scientific mind raced, analyzing the unexpected reaction. He stepped back, running a hand through his hair as he considered the implications. This complicates things significantly. We'll need to rethink our approach entirely. Over the next few days, Sean immersed himself in research, poring over data collected from both human and Shellyak volunteers. He worked tirelessly, fueled by the urgency of their mission and the weight of two civilizations' futures. Meanwhile, beyond the sterile walls of the laboratory, tensions simmered among the human colonists. Major Marcus Blackwood, a grizzled veteran with a perpetual scowl, gathered a group of like-minded individuals in the shadowy recesses of the colony's storage facilities. "We can't trust these aliens," Blackwood growled, his voice low and gravelly. "They're hiding something. I can feel it in my bones. We need to be prepared for the worst." The small group nodded in agreement, their faces etched with suspicion and fear. Blackwood outlined his plans to stockpile weapons and organize a militia, ready to defend human interests at a moment's notice. As the colonists' paranoia grew, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the ISS Odyssey, her expression grave as she decrypted an incoming transmission from Earth. The message's contents sent a chill down her spine. "Another ship?" she muttered, her brow furrowing. "The ISS Titan, arriving in 6 months." The captain's mind raced with the implications. The arrival of a more advanced human expedition could drastically alter the delicate balance they'd struck with the Shellyak. She needed to inform Sean and the diplomatic team immediately. Back in the Shellyak settlement, Sean's relentless research finally bore fruit. He burst into the lab, startling Zephyr, who was examining a holographic display of Shellyak genetic structures. "I've got it," Sean exclaimed, his eyes bright with excitement. "The key to Shellyak reproduction isn't physical contact. It's bioelectric signals." Zephyr's luminescent patterns pulsed with interest as Sean explained his findings. Using modified human medical equipment, they could potentially simulate the complex exchange of bioelectric signals necessary for Shellyak reproduction. As they prepared for their first attempt at artificial genetic exchange, Zephyr's telepathic voice filled Sean's mind, tinged with hesitation. "Sean, there's something I must tell you about my people." She revealed the truth about Shellyak society, a collective of genetically diverse subspecies rather than a single unified race. Zephyr belonged to a minority group whose unique genetic traits were vital for the survival of their entire civilization. "This is why we sought human genetic material so urgently," Zephyr explained, her bioluminescent patterns swirling with a mix of shame and hope. "Our diversity is our strength, but also our greatest vulnerability." Sean absorbed this new information, his knees going weak with the implications. The success of their experiment now carried even greater significance than he had initially believed. As night fell on the alien world, Sean and Zephyr stood before the array of modified medical equipment. The lab hummed with energy, both literal and metaphorical. Sean's hands shook slightly as he attached the electrodes to Zephyr's shimmering skin. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zephyr's telepathic response was filled with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. "Yes, let us hope this brings our people closer together, rather than driving them apart." Unknown to the pair, their progress was being closely monitored. In a dimly lit chamber within the Shellyak High Council building, Counselor Xandor observed the proceedings through a secure feed. His face contorted with displeasure as he watched Sean and Zephyr prepare for the experiment. "This cannot be allowed to succeed," Xandor muttered, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing with dark intent. He turned to a shadowy figure lurking in the corner of the room. "Initiate the sabotage protocol. We must ensure this experiment fails spectacularly." As Sean activated the equipment, a surge of energy filled the lab. Zephyr's body began to glow more intensely, her bioluminescent patterns swirling in mesmerizing patterns. Sean watched in awe, his scientific mind cataloging every detail of the process. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the Shellyak settlement. The lab's equipment sparked and sputtered, causing Sean to stumble backward. Zephyr's telepathic scream pierced his mind as her body convulsed with uncontrolled energy. Outside, the night sky lit up with the flares of descending shuttles. Major Blackwood's militia, misinterpreting the alarms as a sign of Shellyak aggression, had launched a preemptive strike. Simultaneously, Shellyak security forces mobilized, responding to what they perceived as a human attack. As chaos erupted around them, Sean struggled to stabilize the malfunctioning equipment and help Zephyr. The fate of both species hung in the balance, dependent on their ability to overcome this crisis and bridge the gap between their worlds. As Sean activated the equipment, a surge of energy filled the lab. Zephyr's body began to glow more intensely, her bioluminescent patterns swirling in mesmerizing patterns. Sean watched in awe, his scientific mind cataloging every detail of the process. Suddenly, the lab's equipment sparked and sputtered, causing Sean to stumble backward. A massive power surge overwhelmed the modified human medical devices, sending a shockwave of bioelectric energy through Zephyr's body. Her telepathic scream pierced Sean's mind as her form convulsed with uncontrolled energy. "Zephyr!" Sean cried out, rushing to her side. He reached for the emergency shutdown, but it was too late. The surge had already coursed through her system, triggering a cascade of physiological changes. Zephyr's luminescent skin pulsated erratically, shifting through a spectrum of colors Sean had never seen before. Her body contorted and reshaped itself, the metamorphosis unfolding before his eyes. Sean's xenobiologist instincts kicked in, overriding his initial panic. He grabbed his datapad, scanning Zephyr's rapidly changing form. "Incredible," he muttered, eyes wide as he analyzed the readings. The energy surge has activated dormant genes in her DNA. She's adapting. As Sean worked frantically to stabilize Zephyr's condition, alarms blared throughout the Sheliak settlement. The lab's lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness, save for the glow of Zephyr's transforming body. Outside, chaos erupted. The crystal spires that once pierced the sky now stood dark and lifeless. Floating gardens, their anti-gravity systems failing, drifted slowly earthward. Panicked voices, both human and Sheliak, filled the air. In the colony's makeshift barracks, Major Blackwood's eyes gleamed with a mix of fear and anticipation. "This is it, men," he growled, hefting his rifle. "The aliens are making their move. We strike now, before they can organize their forces." His militia, a ragtag group of colonists turned soldiers, nodded grimly. They had prepared for this moment, stockpiling weapons and running drills in secret. Now, as the Sheliak city fell into darkness, they saw their chance to seize control. Aboard the ISS Odyssey, Captain Rodriguez's face was illuminated by the soft glow of emergency lighting. "What do you mean you've lost contact?" she demanded, leaning over the communications officer's shoulder. "It's not just communication, Captain," the officer replied, fingers dancing over his console. "We're detecting massive energy fluctuations across the entire settlement. Something's gone terribly wrong down there." Rodriguez straightened, her eyes hardened. "Prepare a peacekeeping team for immediate deployment. We need to get down there and contain this situation before it spirals out of control." As the captain barked orders, a squad of peacekeepers rushed to the shuttle bay. They boarded their craft, priming weapons and checking equipment. The bay doors opened, revealing the alien world below, now ominously dark. The shuttle launched, streaking through the atmosphere. Suddenly, it began to shudder violently. "What's happening?" the pilot shouted, wrestling with the controls. "Unknown turbulence," his co-pilot responded, eyes glued to the instrument panel. "These energy fluctuations are playing havoc with our systems. We're going down." The shuttle veered off course, smoke trailing from one engine as it careened towards an empty stretch of alien landscape miles from the settlement. Back in the darkened laboratory, Zephyr's transformation reached its climax. Her body, once so alien to Sean, had reshaped itself into a form that bridged the gap between their species. Her skin still glowed, but now it pulsed with a soft, inviting light that seemed to resonate with Sean's very being. Zephyr's eyes fluttered open, locking onto Sean's worried face. Her telepathic voice, usually so controlled and distant, now trembled with a mix of fear and exhilaration. "Sean, what's happened to me? I feel different. Everything feels different." Sean helped her sit up, his hand brushing against her transformed skin. A jolt of pleasure, not pain, passed between them. Zephyr gasped, her new form responding to his touch in ways she had never experienced before. "The energy surge?" Sean explained, his scientific excitement impossibly strong. It activated dormant genes in your DNA. Zephyr, your body has adapted. You've become compatible with human physiology. Before Zephyr could fully process this information, the lab's security system crackled to life. A grainy holographic display flickered into existence, showing Major Blackwood's militia advancing on the Sheliak government building. "We need to stop them," Zephyr said, her voice filled with newfound dedication. "This discovery, it changes everything. We can't let fear and misunderstanding destroy our chance at true cooperation." Sean nodded, helping Zephyr to her feet. "We'll need to reach both the Sheliak High Council and the human leadership. It's the only way to prevent an all-out war." They made their way out of the lab, Sean clutching his datapad with the precious research data. The corridors were dark, emergency lights casting eerie shadows. They could hear distant shouts and the occasional sound of energy weapons discharging. As they turned a corner, they nearly collided with a group of frightened Sheliak civilians. The aliens recoiled at first, then stared in wonder at Zephyr's transformed appearance. "It's all right," Zephyr communicated telepathically, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing soothingly. "We're here to help. Please, stay calm and find shelter." They pressed on, weaving through the chaotic streets of the Sheliak settlement. Human colonists huddled in small groups, eyeing the darkness suspiciously. Sean and Zephyr did their best to reassure those they encountered, but time was running short. As they neared the central plaza, the sound of weapons fire grew louder. Sean pulled Zephyr into a shadowy alcove as a patrol of Sheliak security forces rushed past, their own bioluminescence dimmed to avoid detection. "We're almost there," Sean whispered, peering around the corner. The Sheliak High Council building loomed ahead, its once majestic crystal facade now dark and foreboding. "But how do we get inside, and how do we convince them to listen?" Zephyr placed a hand on Sean's arm, her touch sending a warm tingle through his body. "Together," she said, her telepathic voice filled with a new confidence. "We'll make them listen. We have to." With a shared nod of understanding, Sean and Zephyr emerged from their hiding place. As they approached the High Council building, the sounds of conflict grew louder. Time was running out. The fate of both species now rested in their hands, their unlikely partnership the key to preventing an interstellar war. Sean and Zephyr burst through the doors of the High Council building, their hearts pounding in unison. The once pristine crystal corridors now echoed with the sounds of distant conflict. As they rounded a corner, they collided with a group of human colonists led by a woman in a medical uniform. "Dr. Wells?" Sean gasped, recognizing the Odyssey's chief medical officer. Dr. Emily Wells stared at Zephyr, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and scientific curiosity. "Sean, what's going on? And what is this?" Zephyr's bioluminescent skin pulsed softly, her new form still unfamiliar even to herself. "I am Zephyr," she communicated telepathically. "We have made a discovery that could change everything." Dr. Wells's initial surprise quickly gave way to professional interest. She stepped forward, her medical tricorder already in hand. "Fascinating. The bioelectrical readings are off the charts. Sean, what happened?" As Sean gave a rapid-fire explanation of the accident and its implications, Dr. Wells's expression shifted from skepticism to excitement. "This could be the breakthrough we've been looking for," she said, her voice hushed with awe. "We need to get you to the emergency command center immediately. Both human and Sheliak leaders are gathered there now." The group moved swiftly through the chaotic streets, dodging panicked civilians and debris. Energy weapons discharged in the distance, their flashes illuminating the darkened crystal spires. Sean winced as a human-made projectile ricocheted off a nearby building. "Blackwood's militia," Dr. Wells explained grimly. "They're engaged with Sheliak security forces across the settlement." As they approached the command center, the scale of the conflict became apparent. The once peaceful plaza had been transformed into a battleground. Human colonists crouched behind makeshift barricades, trading fire with Sheliak defenders who used their own technology to create shimmering force fields. "This way," Dr. Wells hissed, leading them through a side entrance. They passed through several security checkpoints, each more heavily guarded than the last. The command center itself was a scene of almost unchecked chaos. Captain Rodriguez stood at the center of the room, her face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. She was engaged in a heated argument with several members of the Sheliak High Council, their bioluminescent patterns flashing in agitation. To everyone's surprise, Major Blackwood was also present, his militia having fought their way into the facility. He stood apart from the others, his weapon at the ready, eyes darting suspiciously between the humans and Sheliaks. The arrival of Sean, Zephyr, and Dr. Wells brought the arguments to an abrupt halt. All eyes turned to Zephyr, her transformed appearance eliciting gasps of shock and wonder. Sean stepped forward, his datapad clutched tightly in his hand. "Captain, counselors, Major, we have made a discovery that changes everything." He launched into an explanation of the accidental energy surge and its effects on Zephyr's physiology. As he spoke, he gently took Zephyr's hand, causing her skin to glow in response to his touch. The assembled leaders watched in fascination as Sean demonstrated the newfound compatibility between human and Sheliak biology. Captain Rodriguez was the first to grasp the implications. "This could be the key to peaceful coexistence," she breathed, her eyes shining with hope. The Sheliak High Council members conferred among themselves, their telepathic communication evident in the synchronized pulsing of their bioluminescent patterns. Finally, one stepped forward. "This development offers a potential solution to our fertility crisis," the alien announced, its mental voice tinged with cautious optimism. Major Blackwood, however, remained unconvinced. "How do we know this isn't some kind of Sheliak trick?" he demanded, his grip tightening on his weapon. Zephyr moved to the center of the room, her transformed body commanding attention. "I propose an immediate demonstration," she announced, her telepathic voice resonating with newfound confidence. "A public display of human Sheliak compatibility. Sean and I will undergo a complete mating process, broadcast to both populations." Sean's eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly understood the significance of the moment. "I'm willing," he said, meeting Zephyr's gaze with a mixture of nervousness and commitment. Captain Rodriguez nodded slowly. "It's risky, but it might be our best chance to de-escalate the situation." As preparations for the demonstration began, news arrived that the Odyssey's peacekeeping squad had finally reached the settlement. Their presence helped to establish a tense ceasefire, giving both sides a chance to witness the unprecedented event. The command center was swiftly repurposed, with Dr. Wells overseeing the installation of medical monitoring equipment. Representatives from both species filed in, their expressions a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and hope. Sean and Zephyr took their positions at the center of the makeshift exhibition hall. As they began the mating ritual, combining human intimacy with complex Sheliak bioelectric exchanges, the atmosphere in the room shifted from tense to awestruck. Zephyr's initial trepidation melted away as waves of pleasure coursed through her newly transformed body. Her skin pulsated with increasingly vibrant patterns, a visual representation of the successful genetic exchange taking place. Dr. Wells provided running commentary, her voice steady and professional, despite the unprecedented nature of the event. "The genetic markers are aligning," she reported, her eyes fixed on a display of swirling DNA strands. "We're seeing successful recombination of human and Sheliak genetic material." As the ritual reached its climax, a sudden power surge swept through the settlement systems. Zephyr's bioluminescence flared to blinding intensity, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When the light faded, Sean and Zephyr found themselves at the center of a stunned silence. Dr. Wells broke the quiet with a gasp of amazement. "It worked," she announced, her voice filled with wonder. "The scans confirmed the creation of viable human Sheliak hybrid genetic material." The implications of this success rippled through the assembled crowd. Even Major Blackwood lowered his weapon, his expression one of grudging acceptance. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, her eyes moving from Sean and Zephyr to the Sheliak High Council. "I believe," she said, her voice firm, "that we have the beginnings of an alliance here." As the initial shock wore off, the room erupted into a flurry of activity. Human and Sheliak leaders huddled together, beginning the process of negotiating a formal agreement. Plans for a joint scientific task force were quickly drafted, with Dr. Wells eagerly volunteering to lead the human contingent. However, as the euphoria of the moment began to subside, new concerns emerged. Sean overheard worried whispers about the long-term implications of widespread interbreeding. A Sheliak counselor raised questions about preserving the unique aspects of both cultures in the face of such profound biological compatibility. Amidst the growing discussions, Captain Rodriguez pulled Sean and Zephyr aside. "You've given us a chance at peace," she said, her expression serious. "But we're not out of the woods yet. The ISS Titan is still on its way, unaware of these developments. We need to prepare for their arrival and ensure this fragile alliance holds." Sean nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He looked at Zephyr, her transformed body a living symbol of the changes they had set in motion. Together, they faced the challenges ahead, knowing that the future of human-Sheliak relations rested in their hands. They shared a determined look, knowing that their work was far from finished. In the weeks that followed, Sean and Zephyr found themselves at the center of a rapidly changing society. The successful demonstration of human-Sheliak compatibility had opened floodgates of curiosity and desire. Interspecies couples became a common sight in the settlement, their joined hands and mingled bioluminescence a testament to the new era of cooperation. Sean and Zephyr's relationship became a symbol of hope. Their every public appearance met with a mix of awe and enthusiasm. They attended countless meetings, gave interviews, and participated in scientific studies, their union serving as a living example of what was possible. But as they walked through the crystalline streets one evening, Sean noticed a shift in the atmosphere. Whispers followed them, and not all were friendly. A group of Sheliak watched them pass, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with what Sean had learned to recognize as disapproval. "Zephyr," he murmured, "do you feel that? Something's changing." Zephyr's skin flickered in response, her newly acquired human expressions mixing with her native bioluminescence. "I sense it too. There's a growing undercurrent of fear." Their concerns were confirmed the next day when they attended a town hall meeting. As they entered the Grand Crystal Auditorium, they noticed the crowd had segregated itself. Humans clustered on one side, Sheliak on the other, with only a handful of mixed couples scattered throughout. Captain Rodriguez stood at the podium, her face etched with worry. "We've received reports of isolated incidents of violence against interspecies couples," she announced, her voice echoing through the tense silence. "This behavior will not be tolerated." A commotion erupted from the Sheliak side of the room. A tall, imposing figure rose, his skin pulsing with aggressive patterns. "And what of the violence against our culture?" he demanded, his telepathic voice resonating with anger. "Each hybrid birth dilutes our species, weakens our connection to our ancestors." Sean recognized the speaker as Counselor Zandor, a member of the Sheliak High Council known for his conservative views. Zandor's words seemed to awaken something in the crowd. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the Sheliak, while the humans shifted uneasily. Before Captain Rodriguez could respond, a human voice cut through the tension. "Why should we care about Sheliak culture?" A muscular man with close-cropped hair stood, his stance aggressive. "This planet could be ours if we just took it." "Victor Reeves," Zephyr whispered to Sean, her skin pulsing with anxiety. "He's been vocal about human superiority since the first days of the colony." Captain Rodriguez raised her hands, trying to calm the increasingly agitated crowd. "Please, we must remember the progress we've made. Our differences are our strength." Her words were drowned out by shouts from both sides. Sean watched in horror as the meeting devolved into chaos, with humans and Sheliak hurling accusations at each other. He felt Zephyr's hand tighten in his, her skin cool against his palm. In the days that followed, the once peaceful settlement transformed. Security checkpoints appeared at major intersections, manned by mixed teams of human and Sheliak guards. The crystal spires that had once seemed welcoming now loomed ominously, their surfaces reflecting the tension that permeated the air. Sean and Zephyr tried to maintain their normal routine, but found themselves increasingly isolated. Friends from both species began to distance themselves, caught between loyalty to their own kind and their affection for the couple. One afternoon, as they made their way to a hybridization clinic for a routine checkup, Sean noticed they were being followed. A group of humans and Sheliak, moving together despite their obvious discomfort with each other, tracked their movements from a distance. "Zephyr," Sean whispered, "don't look back, but I think we're in trouble." They quickened their pace, weaving through the crowded streets. The crystal buildings around them seemed to close in, their once beautiful facets now feeling like a maze with no exit. As they rounded a corner, a figure stepped out in front of them. Sean recognized Victor Reeves, his face twisted in a sneer. "Well, if it isn't the poster children for species betrayal," Reeves spat. Before Sean could respond, he felt a sharp pain in his side. He turned to see a Sheliak, its skin pulsing with hatred, wielding some kind of energy weapon. Sean stumbled, his vision blurring. "Sean!" Zephyr's cry was both vocal and telepathic, her fear palpable. The world spun as Sean fell to his knees. He was vaguely aware of shouting, of Zephyr's bioluminescence flaring in distress. Then, darkness claimed him. He awoke in the medical bay, the sterile white surfaces a stark contrast to the crystal architecture of the Sheliak settlement. Dr. Emily Wells stood over him, her face a mixture of relief and concern. "Welcome back, Sean," she said, her voice soft. "You gave us quite a scare." Sean tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in his side. "Zephyr, is she—" "I'm here." Zephyr's voice came from his other side. He turned to see her, her skin pulsing with a mix of worry and relief. "I'm unharmed." Dr. Wells helped Sean into a sitting position. "You were lucky. The weapon was set to stun, not kill. But this attack, it's a tipping point. The captain has implemented even stricter security measures." Sean nodded, his mind racing. "This can't continue. We need to find a way to bridge this divide before it's too late." Dr. Wells hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "There might be a way. I've made a discovery about the hybrid genetic material you and Zephyr created. It exhibits some unexpected properties." As Dr. Wells explained her findings, Sean felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this could be the key to convincing both sides of the benefits of hybridization. But as he looked at Zephyr, saw the worry in her eyes and the protective way she cradled her midsection, he realized that the stakes had just become much higher. For in that moment, Sean understood that their fight was no longer just for peace between their species, but for the future of the child growing within Zephyr, a child that represented the ultimate union of human and Sheliak. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger from extremists on both sides. But as Sean reached out to take Zephyr's hand, feeling the familiar tingle of her touch, he knew that they would face whatever came next together. Their journey to the Sheliak archives lay ahead, a mission that could determine the fate of both their species and the hybrid civilization they had inadvertently set in motion. Their journey to the Sheliak archives lay ahead, a mission that could determine the fate of both their species and the hybrid civilization they had inadvertently set in motion. As Sean, Zephyr, and Dr. Wells stepped out of the medical bay, the once peaceful corridors of the settlement felt alien and hostile. The air thrummed with tension, punctuated by distant shouts and the occasional sound of breaking crystal. "We need to move quickly," Dr. Wells whispered, her eyes darting nervously. "The archives are on the other side of the central plaza." Sean nodded, his hand instinctively finding Zephyr's. Her skin pulsed with a mix of anxiety and persistence, the bioluminescent patterns reflecting off the crystalline walls. They made their way through the winding streets, Sean's military training kicking in as he led them through shadows and less traveled paths. Zephyr's intimate knowledge of Sheliak architecture proved invaluable, guiding them through hidden passageways and maintenance tunnels. As they approached the central plaza, the sounds of conflict grew louder. Rounding a corner, they came face to face with a scene of chaos. Human separatists clashed with Sheliak purists, their weapons a bizarre mix of Earth technology and Sheliak bioengineering. "We can't go through there," Sean muttered, pulling the others back into cover. Zephyr's skin flickered rapidly, her newly acquired human expressions mixing with Sheliak communication patterns. "There's another way," she said, her voice barely audible over the din of battle. "Through the crystal gardens." They backtracked, following Zephyr's lead through a maze of luminescent flora. The gardens, once a place of beauty and contemplation, now felt eerie and threatening. Shadows danced among the crystal formations, and more than once they had to duck behind glowing fronds to avoid patrolling guards. Finally, they emerged near the imposing structure of the Sheliak Archives. Its spires reached toward the alien sky, their facets reflecting the carnage unfolding in the streets below. "Oh no," Dr. Wells breathed, her face paling. The entrance to the archives was heavily guarded, a mix of Sheliak warriors and automated defenses forming an impenetrable barrier. At their center stood Counselor Xandor, his tall form radiating authority and disdain. "He must have anticipated our plan," Sean growled, frustration evident in his voice. Dr. Wells' eyes narrowed, a plan forming. "I have an idea," she said, reaching into her medical kit, "but I'll need you two to be ready to move fast." Before Sean or Zephyr could respond, Dr. Wells had stepped out from their hiding place, her voice ringing out across the plaza. "Medical emergency! We need assistance!" The guards turned, startled by the sudden appearance of the human doctor. Dr. Wells stumbled forward, clutching her side and groaning convincingly. As she collapsed to the ground, several guards rushed to her aid, creating a momentary gap in their defenses. Sean and Zephyr seized the opportunity, darting from cover and racing towards the archive entrance. Zephyr's skin glowed intensely as she interfaced with the Sheliak security systems, her transformed physiology allowing her to bypass the complex alien technology. The massive doors slid open with a low hum, and they slipped inside just as shouts of alarm rose behind them. The interior of the archives was a vast cathedral-like space, filled with pulsating crystals that Sean realized must be the Sheliak equivalent of data storage. "We need to hurry," Zephyr said, her voice tight with tension. "Where do we start?" Sean scanned the room, his eyes settling on a central console. "There. It looks like some kind of interface." As they approached the console, Zephyr suddenly gasped, her hand flying to her abdomen. Sean turned, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right?" Zephyr nodded, her skin pulsing rapidly. "Yes, just the baby. It's reacting to something here." Before Sean could respond, the ground beneath him shook violently. The sound of distant explosions filtered through the thick walls of the archive. "What was that?" Sean asked, steadying himself against the console. Zephyr's eyes widened, her telepathic abilities picking up the chaos outside. "It's Victor Reeves. He's launched an attack on the government buildings." Sean cursed under his breath, turning back to the console. "We need to find what we came for, fast." Zephyr placed her hands on the interface, her skin beginning to glow as she connected with the Sheliak systems. Data flowed through her, ancient records and historical documents flashing across her mind. "Sean," she breathed, her voice filled with awe. "I'm seeing our history. The Sheliak, we've changed so much over time." As Zephyr delved deeper into the archives, Sean watched in fascination. The crystals around them pulsed with increasing intensity, responding to Zephyr's presence. Suddenly, Zephyr cried out, her body convulsing. Sean caught her as she fell, lowering her gently to the ground. Her skin flickered erratically, patterns of light racing across her body. "Zephyr, what's happening?" Sean asked, panic rising in his throat. Zephyr's eyes fluttered open, filled with a mixture of pain and wonder. "The baby," she gasped. "It's changing, adapting." Sean's mind raced, connecting the dots between the historical data and Zephyr's condition. "Your body is transforming again," he realized, to better support the hybrid child. As Sean cradled Zephyr, the archive doors burst open. He tensed, ready to defend his partner. But instead of enemies, he saw Dr. Wells leading a group of humans and Sheliak. "We've got company," Dr. Wells announced, her voice tinged with relief. "And you won't believe who decided to join our side." From behind her stepped Major Blackwood, his usual scowl replaced by a look of purpose. "We've seen what hybridization can do," he said gruffly. "It's time to end this conflict." As the newcomers secured the archive, Sean turned back to Zephyr, who was slowly regaining her strength. The information they had discovered could change everything, but with the battle raging outside and the ISS Titan approaching, time was running out. Sean helped Zephyr to her feet, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared drive. They had come too far to give up now. With the fate of both their species hanging in the balance, They prepared to make their stand, knowing that the next few hours would determine the future of human-Shellyak relations and the destiny of their unborn child. Sean helped Zephyr to her feet, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared persistence. As they prepared to face the chaos outside, the archive doors burst open once more. Captain Rodriguez strode in, flanked by a squad of heavily armed peacekeepers. "We've secured a temporary ceasefire," Rodriguez announced, her voice crisp and authoritative. "The ISS Titan has arrived with reinforcements. We've created a buffer zone in the central plaza." Sean's shoulders sagged with relief. "Perfect timing, Captain. We've discovered crucial information that could change everything." Rodriguez nodded briskly. "Then let's not waste this opportunity. We've set up a makeshift communication system in the plaza. You can address both sides from there." As they exited the archives, Sean was struck by the eerie silence that had fallen over the settlement. The once bustling streets were now littered with debris, the crystal buildings bearing scorch marks from energy weapons. In the distance, the sleek form of the ISS Titan loomed against the alien sky, a symbol of hope and potential conflict. They made their way to the central plaza where a tense standoff had formed. Human separatists and Shellyak purists glared at each other across the buffer zone, their weapons lowered but not holstered. Between them stood a hastily assembled platform with broadcasting equipment. Sean helped Zephyr onto the platform, acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes fixed upon them. Humans and Shellyak alike watched with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. As Sean prepared to speak, Zephyr suddenly gasped, her hand flying to her abdomen. "Zephyr!" Sean's voice was thick with concern. She shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's okay. The baby, it's moving." Inspiration struck Sean. He turned to the crowd, his voice ringing out across the plaza. "Look at us," he called, "human and Shellyak, standing together, and within her," he gestured to Zephyr's swollen abdomen, "grows the future of both our species." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Zephyr stepped forward, her bioluminescent skin pulsating with a soft, mesmerizing glow. She lifted her shirt, revealing her pregnant belly to the astonished onlookers. "This child," Zephyr's voice carried both vocally and telepathically, "is not an abomination. It is the next step in our evolution." Sean nodded, pressing a hand to Zephyr's belly. "The Shellyak archives have revealed a truth that both sides need to hear. Genetic adaptation has been crucial to Shellyak survival throughout their history. Hybridization is not a threat, but a natural continuation of this process." As Sean delved deeper into the archive's revelations, explaining how hybridization could help both species thrive on their new home planet, Zephyr suddenly doubled over, a cry of pain escaping her lips. "Zephyr!" Sean caught her as she stumbled. Dr. Wells pushed through the crowd, her medical kit in hand. "It's the stress," she said, quickly assessing Zephyr's condition. "She's gone into premature labor." A hush fell over the plaza. Even the most hardened separatists and purists couldn't tear their eyes away from the unfolding drama. "We need to get her to the medical bay," Dr. Wells urged. Sean shook his head. "There's no time. It's happening now." With the eyes of both species upon them, Sean and Dr. Wells worked together to safely deliver the first human Shellyak hybrid child. Zephyr's bioluminescent skin brightened to an intense glow as the labor progressed, bathing the plaza in an otherworldly light. Hours passed, the crowd growing rather than dispersing. Humans and Shellyak, who had been at each other's throats mere hours ago, now stood side by side, united in their anticipation. Finally, a new sound cut through the tense silence, the cry of a newborn. Sean held up the child, a perfect blend of human and Shellyak features. Its skin pulsed with a soft bioluminescence, and when it opened its eyes, they shone with an inner light. The crowd gasped in unison. The sight of the hybrid child, alive and thriving, challenged everything they thought they knew about their species' compatibility. From the crowd, two figures emerged, Victor Reeves and Counselor Zandor. They approached the platform, their faces a mix of awe and uncertainty. Reeves spoke first, his voice gruff but lacking its usual hostility. "I've been fighting against this, against the very idea of it, but seeing that child, I can't deny the possibility it represents." Xandor's skin pulsed with agreement. Perhaps we have been too hasty in our judgment. In a move that shocked everyone present, Reeves extended his hand to Xandor. What do you say we call a ceasefire? Give this hybrid thing a real chance? As Xandor clasped Reeves's hand, a cheer erupted from the crowd. The fighting that had threatened to tear apart their fledgling colony began to fade, replaced by a cautious optimism. Captain Rodriguez seized the moment, stepping forward to address the gathered humans and Sheliak. The ISS Titan brings with it supplies and technology that can benefit us all. I propose we form a joint council with equal representation from humans, Sheliak, and our new hybrid population. As discussions broke out among the crowd, Sean cradled his newborn child, Zephyr, resting against him. They had won a significant victory, but he knew challenges still lay ahead. The extremists who had retreated to the wilderness, the approaching Sheliak fleet, these were problems for another day. For now, as Sean watched humans and Sheliak cautiously mingling, sharing their first peaceful interactions in weeks, he allowed himself a moment of hope. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since the conflict began, it looked bright. Bright. The birth of Nova had marked a turning point, but the challenges ahead remained formidable. As the days passed, Sean and Zephyr found themselves thrust into dual roles, new parents and ambassadors for human-Sheliak relations. Their modest dwelling became a hub of activity, with a steady stream of visitors eager to catch a glimpse of the hybrid child. Nova grew at an astonishing rate, her development far outpacing that of either human or Sheliak infants. Her skin pulsed with a soft bioluminescence, changing patterns as she experienced different emotions. Her eyes, a striking blend of human and Sheliak characteristics, seemed to hold depths of wisdom beyond her years. One morning, as Sean cradled Nova in his arms, Captain Rodriguez arrived with urgent news. The Sheliak fleet has been detected at the edge of our star system, she announced, her voice tight with tension. We have less than a week before they arrive. Zephyr's skin flickered with concern. How do we prepare for their arrival? They may not react well to what we've accomplished here. Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. The Joint Council has been working on a plan. We want to stage a welcoming ceremony that showcases our integrated society. You three will be at the center of it all. Over the next few days, the settlement transformed. Humans and Sheliak worked side by side, constructing a grand pavilion in the central plaza. The architecture was a stunning blend of human ingenuity and Sheliak bioengineering, with crystalline structures that pulsed with light and energy. On the morning of the fleet's arrival, Sean stood at the edge of the settlement, Nova secure in a sling across his chest. Zephyr stood beside him, her skin shimmering with a mix of anticipation and nervous energy. In the distance, the sky began to shimmer as the Sheliak ships pierced the atmosphere. Are you ready for this? Sean asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zephyr's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. As ready as we'll ever be. They made their way to the central plaza, where humans and Sheliak had gathered in a carefully choreographed formation. As the lead ship descended, its crystalline form catching the light of the alien sun, a hush fell over the crowd. The ship's main hatch opened with a soft hiss, and a ramp extended to the ground. Admiral Zyra emerged, her tall, willowy form adorned with intricate bioluminescent patterns that denoted her high rank. Sean and Zephyr stepped forward, Nova cradled between them. The child, sensing the importance of the moment, remained uncharacteristically still, her eyes wide and curious. Admiral Zyra's gaze swept over the assembled crowd, lingering on the sight of humans and Sheliak standing shoulder to shoulder. When her eyes fell on Sean, Zephyr, and Nova, she visibly started, her skin flashing with surprise. Welcome to our world, Sean said, his voice carrying across the plaza. We have much to show you. Zephyr added her own greeting, a complex series of bioelectric signals that conveyed respect, hope, and a plea for understanding. Admiral Zyra approached cautiously, her eyes fixed on Nova. The child chose that moment to laugh, a sound that bridged the gap between human and Sheliak vocal ranges. The Admiral's stern expression softened almost imperceptibly. This is unexpected, Zyra said, her voice a melodic hum. Explain. Over the next hour, Sean and Zephyr recounted the events that had led to their union and the birth of Nova. They spoke of initial conflict, scientific breakthroughs, and the gradual realization that their species were more compatible than anyone had imagined. As they talked, Nova reached out, her tiny hand brushing against the Admiral's arm. A spark of bioelectric energy passed between them, and Zira's eyes widened in astonishment. "The child, she carries both human and Shellyak traits," Zira murmured. "She does," Zephyr confirmed, "and she's not alone. Would you like to see what we've accomplished here?" Admiral Zira hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Show me." What followed was a carefully orchestrated tour of the settlement. Sean and Zephyr led the Admiral through streets where humans and Shellyak worked and lived together harmoniously. They visited workshops where human craftsmanship combined with Shellyak biotechnology to create marvels neither species could have achieved alone. In the medical facilities, Dr. Wells presented data on the hybrid population's enhanced resilience to the planet's environmental challenges. The combination of human adaptability and Shellyak genetic plasticity has resulted in a new subspecies uniquely suited to this world, she explained. As night fell, the settlement came alive with a dazzling display of art and culture. Human musicians played alongside Shellyak lightweavers, creating a symphony of sound and color that left the Admiral visibly moved. The tour culminated at the newly established Hybridization Institute. Here, Admiral Zira witnessed hybrid children demonstrating both human problem-solving skills and Shellyak telepathic abilities. "This is remarkable," Zira admitted, her earlier skepticism giving way to cautious admiration. In a private meeting with the Joint Council, Admiral Zira revealed the true reason for the Shellyak fleet's arrival. "Our homeworld is dying," she said, her skin pulsing with sorrow. "We sought new planets to colonize, but we never imagined this." Captain Rodriguez leaned forward, her eyes bright with possibility. "Perhaps there's a solution that can benefit us all," she suggested. "A partnership to explore and colonize new worlds together." As discussions continued late into the night, Sean and Zephyr returned to their home, exhausted but hopeful. Nova slept peacefully between them, her soft bioluminescence a gentle reminder of the bright future they were fighting for. The next morning dawned clear and bright. In the central plaza, humans, Shellyak, and hybrids gathered for a historic moment. Admiral Zira stood before them, a document in her hands. "Today," she announced, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd, "we sign a treaty not just of peace but of cooperation and shared destiny." As Zira's signature joined those of the human and Shellyak leaders, a cheer erupted from the assembled crowd. Sean held Nova high, the child's laughter ringing out like a beacon of hope. In that moment, as human and Shellyak voices joined in celebration, Sean realized that their journey was far from finished. The signing of the treaty was not an end, but a beginning. As he looked at Zephyr, her skin glowing with joy, and felt Nova's warmth in his arms, he knew that the greatest adventures still lay ahead.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.